Warning, Tongue and Geek contains heavy spoilers. If you haven't read, watched, or played the content being reviewed this episode, know that we will definitely spoil major plot points. Also, this show isn't for kids. We use words like and and it would take too much time and effort to edit them all out. Please don't tell our moms. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to Tongue in Geek, where two more white guys on the internet give their unsolicited opinions on all things geeky. I'm Isaac.
I'm Tyler.
And today we're reviewing RRR, the 2022 Indian Telugu language epic action drama film. That is how it is described on Wikipedia. Directed by, and I apologize in advance for the butchering I'm about to do to all these names. I'm an uneducated hick. I'm trying my best.
Same.
S.S. Rajamouli, written by Rajamouli and V.V. Prasad, produced by D.V.V. Danaya of D.V.V. Entertainment, and starring N.T. Rama Rao Jr., Ram Charan, A.J. Devin, Alia Bhatt, Shreya Saran. Oh, Lord. Okay, this one's long. Samu Thirukani, I think.
There you go. When you say it faster, it sounds better.
Ray Stevenson. Okay, that's a white person name.
Oh, an Anglo name.
That's an England name. Alison Doody, that's funny. And Olivia Morris.
Alison Doody is actually the love interest in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that?
And Ray Stevenson was the Punisher in the Punisher Warzone.
Oh. Well, Tyler, since you've started on the background, how about you just give us some more?
Well, if you're wondering what RRR can possibly mean, it stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt.
Although the film will trick you because it starts off with three parts that says story, fire, water, and each one of those has an R in it, and it makes it look like it's an R. Okay, so the movie stands for story, fire, water, and then it's like, nope.
Well, it stands for all of it. That's the genius of this film. It's all the little fun Easter eggs that it has.
It stands for
Rise, Roar, Revolt. To briefly summarize it, because this is a 3-hour epic, it's loosely, and by loosely, very, very loosely, based on the real life two Indian revolutionaries during the early 20th century, during, British imperialism. The first one being Alluri Sitarama Raju and Kararam Bhim.
Yes, Raju being played by Sharan, and Bhim being played by Rama Rao.
And these two revolutionaries never met in real life, never knew each other, but the movie is about a meet-cute between them.
It really is!
And their undying friendship and brotherhood and betrayal and secret identities, and we'll get to it.
It's historical fan fiction, and it's amazing.
As Isaac said in his introduction, it is a Tollywood film. Since we're both very, 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 very nascent in our understanding and knowledge of Indian cinema, that it'd be kind of good to kind of differentiate. Everybody, movie fans know the term Bollywood. They just think, Bollywood means Indian cinema. Not necessarily the case. Bollywood is a region of India where Bollywood films come from. RRR is a Tollywood film, which is the region of South India where it comes from. Hence its native language being Telugu. Basically, not all Indian films are Bollywood, but all Bollywood films are Indian. And Bollywood itself is a bit of an informal term. This movie was a huge international hit. I believe it's the biggest grossing movie in India in history up to this point.
I don't know if it's the biggest grossing, but it was the most expensive, costing $72 million US.
That's a decent amount for a U.S. blockbuster, and considering it's the highest budgeted Indian film in history, I guess that has to be, comparatively speaking, a huge budget.
It shows. It's a really good movie with some really good effects.
Mm-hmm. And what was I going to say? It broke through internationally. It has kind of widespread appeal across the border here in America, and actually made a decent amount of money here. And it's kind of just like blown up in film fan circles. It's like, oh my god, this RRR movie, it's fucking nuts.
Yeah,
it's crazy. You gotta see it. And
did we say that it's on Netflix? It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix, but it's not in its original Telugu language. It's actually dubbed in Hindi on Netflix for some reason.
Which is weird, yeah.
Which a lot of people are like real, sticklers for, like, I want to watch a foreign film in its native language, which, I can't blame them. But if you can't track it down, it's on Netflix, so you can watch it in all its glory on Netflix, and that's where we watched it. Where the hell do you start with like RRR?
I want to do something a little different. Let's start with the antagonists. Like you said, it was set during the period of British imperialism, the British Raj in India. During like the 1920s. The antagonists in this movie are just the most sick, twisted British bastards.
Yeah, they're fucking awful. They're evil incarnate.
The movie starts with this white woman in the middle of a village in the middle of the jungle getting is she getting her fingernails painted or like something painted on her arm by like a village girl?
Yeah,
something like that.
Kind of like I wish I knew the term for that. Just kind of like, body tattoo. It's not a real tattoo. It's not a permanent tattoo, but it's kind of like body art.
Yeah, it's like body art. The little girl is singing while she's painting, and it's already very unsettling in this first scene because you can tell like everyone in the village is nervous around this white woman. You see that there's armed white men around too. Her husband, who is like the governor at this time, shows up and says, "All right, she's yours if you want her," and they take the little girl. They steal this little girl from the village, and like it sets off the whole chain of events for the movie. But what you don't know that until later on down the line. You could just see this and think it's setting like the tone for, oh, this is what time period and what vibe we're going for, this terrible period of imperialism and fascism during this time period. But it's such a good and such an awesome scene to set like how much of bastards these fucking villains are.
Yeah, it doesn't try to be subtlety is not in this film's language.
No.
And it's all for the better.
To its benefit, yes.
Right off, but that doesn't necessarily make it, like, it is silly in an over-the-top blockbuster way, but it's not silly in how it tells its story. Because right from the get-go, you can tell, like, here these British imperialists are, and like, they're just having, they're at this quaint, Indian village, and you can tell even before dialogue is spoken that they're kind of just like using these people just as like utility for like passive entertainment. They're not real people to them. They're just commodity.
Oh my God.
And that's a running theme in the movie with the main villain, who continually compares the lives of Indian people to bullets.
Yes.
Because there are multiple times in the film where a British soldier is going to shoot an Indian person, one of the protagonists or something, and he stops them, basically chastising the soldier like,
do you know how much that's worth?
Yeah, that bullet was crafted in the British Empire and crossed the seas to make it into your gun. It's worth more than the life that you're going to, snuff out with it.
And then he'll have them grab a fucking rock or a stick or something and beat the person instead. And it's like, it's so fucking sick. Like, at the gate, this is just a right bastard that we want to see dead.
Oh yeah, he's like, they're some of the most hateable villains in a movie like this I've seen in a long
Fuck
time.
The British.
Fuck imperialism. And
fuck imperialism. Oh, God.
Fuck it all.
Scott and Catherine Buxton is the character's name.
Yes. But it's not really about the villain so much it is as about these two characters.
Yes.
Who are both fantastic characters. And what makes the movie work is that it's a simple story, but it's told so well. and told with like so much nuance that you actually kind of don't know where it's going.
And flair. My God, the flair in this film.
So much. We meet Beam, who is a warrior from the tribe that the little girl was kidnapped from.
Mm-hmm.
They sent him out to find her, and it's such a cool scene. Like they're talking to the Raj, and it's like, oh, you know, they're a quaint people, they're a provincial people, they're not violent, but this one guy.
The shepherd.
This one guy they have, he's gonna go through hell and back to find this girl, so we gotta watch out for him.
This movie does such a good job introducing our villains, our protagonists, because we get 3 sections. We get the first one, which is called The Story, and each one's like got a section break to it. The story is what we described with like the whole like kidnapping of the girl. Second one is, I think, Fire. We'll talk about water first since you brought Beam up, but Beam is introduced, like Tyler said, as like he's talking to the Raj, and then we get this flashback to him fucking catching a tiger in the middle of the jungle. Like he does this whole thing where he like baits it into chasing him through the jungle, and then he gets it stuck in a trap, and then he uses his bare hands to like hold it in place while the others like tranquilize it. It's so good.
It's a superhero movie, basically.
It really is.
2 historical fan fiction superhero dudes in this musical action bromance epic.
Yes.
So Beam, he's looking for the girl who was kidnapped, and then there's Rama, who is with the British. Going into this movie, I knew it was about these 2 guys who strike up a friendship during this time period, but I didn't know like how that would come about, why it would come about. When I found out that Rama was with the British, I'm like, huh.
Is it Rama or Raju?
It's Rama Raju.
Okay.
Raju.
Okay.
I just like the name Rama. It sounds cool, so I'm just gonna refer to him as Rama.
Cool.
It's a cool name. He's introduced probably even more badass than Beam.
He is, and it's in an antagonistic way. Like I saw him, and I'm like, oh damn, they really went out of the way to make this like race traitor fascist look like a total badass. What are they gonna do with this? Because I went in blind. I knew nothing about either of these historical figures or about the context of this story. I was like, okay, this guy who is clearly like a race traitor and a bastard has just gone through a whole like 10,000 person mob and beat the shit out of them in order to catch one guy that he was told to arrest.
They're at a military outpost, and there's this huge demonstration protest outside of the gates. Hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe thousands.
Just a swarm, a sea of people.
One of them throws a rock, and it hits one of the fucking asshole British, and arrest that man! Rama, being the ultimate badass, jumps over the fence and just pile drives, bulldozes through the crowd, and like it's actually believable in how it's choreographed.
Is it?
Like
he fought like 1,000 people.
I meant as far as the visual presentation.
He shoves like 30 people off of a cliff, Tyler.
I know, but it's awesome, and it looks good.
Awesome. It's awesome and amazing, and the visuals are great. But holy shit, there is no realism to this film.
It's called verisimilitude, Isaac. Look it up.
Okay.
So yeah, he basically fights off an entire mob of people to arrest this one guy. He takes his licks, and you think he's down for the count once he crosses back over to the fence, but he gets up, washes off, and stands up in his post again.
Oh my god, it's so badass, and it's like, oh my god, this dude's fucking terrifying. I hope Beam can stand a chance against him.
Yep. So how are they going to meet? Well, considering that Rama's a badass, like, hey, we want you to keep a lookout for this guy who's going to try to come fuck our shit up. So that's his job, and he's going to stop at nothing to find this infiltrator. And like the first 45 minutes, hour of the movie is like their separate stories. It culminates in Rama finally meeting Beam. They're both collectively trying to save a boy. And it's just this huge, crazy, elaborate action set piece where they're collectively teaming up to save this boy.
A train dumps some oil into a river. It catches fire around this kid who is in the river, and they have to, like, one of them's on horseback, one of them is on a motorcycle. They jump over a bridge and swing through the air on ropes.
I'm trying to talk about it without just describing how cool it is beat for beat.
It's amazing.
They're swinging from ropes and there's fire and like Rama throws a flag to Beam, who swings down like Spider-Man to whip it around himself to go through the fire so he doesn't get burned. I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
It's amazing. There's so much with action sequences in American films. I think we've gotten to the point where a lot of action tends to feel samey. I'm thinking specifically in like superhero films. A lot of it tends to be like big heavy punches or CGI effects where they sort of just throw things around and stuff. And there's obvious exceptions, but this movie goes so far out of its way to show how this idea of superhuman strength and agility and everything can still be fun, because it's choreographed so over the top insane. It's not just, hey, they're punching dudes real hard and the guys go flying whenever they punch. It's like, hey, he's fighting through a mob of 10,000 people. He shoves a bunch of them off a cliff, and now they're swinging over the edge of this bridge, like through fire and stuff. All of it feels like every single action sequence in this is a fuck yeah action sequence.
Yeah, I guess to get a bit more technical, so much of American blockbuster action, with some exceptions, it kind of can just feel like just digital blobs of CGI noise.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the cynical way to talk about it. But, I mean, after so many of the same kinds of movies with so much of the same kind of effects and action, the action can lose personality. It can tend to not feel like it's really all that well staged and choreographed and thought out. With this movie, even though there's a lot of CGI enhancement to the action, it's so well planned and shot and choreographed. Like, you're not once lost in the action. All of it's shot in amazing wides, and the camera's not shaking all over the place. There's real actors doing real fight choreography and real stunts. There's real explosions. There's real props.
And I think what helps... I think what helps is that a lot of it is also, the choreography isn't just hit each other harder until one of you falls down. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of creativity in the action about how it escalates.
Like, later on, there's a fight scene where, like, there's a bunch of fire all over the place. So what does Beam do? He grabs a fucking water hose and starts slinging it around as a weapon while also putting out the flames that are, like, dangerous to him.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
There's so much in this movie, it's like you can forget about so much of the cool shit.
A lot of the time, they won't fight hand-to-hand. They'll run away from each other because they have other missions that they're trying to do. Their whole job isn't just beat the shit out of each other. It's like there's a bunch of different goals happening and a lot of different things that they're trying to accomplish in each action scene that makes it feel much more interesting.
Mm-hmm. And this big action scene where they meet up in the first hour of the movie, you know, that all serves the purpose of, you know, these guys gaining respect for each other and liking each other during this mutual action trying to save this child. And we get the title card like an hour in when they like swing towards each other and like lock arms.
They lock arms, clasp hands, and then the most badass song starts playing, and all of the lyrics are about like, these two brothers sharing a destined bond, but on opposite ends of fate, will this end in bloodshed? That's not what it sounds like.
An anime song. It's like an anime
so
song.
good. It's just this like so on the nose, perfect hot energy song about like they're bonded by fate and love and brotherhood, and will they fight and be enemies or allies? We'll see. And it's so good. I can't explain. And it's all over the top of them. Like they fall into the water after the saving kid. They're slow-mo running through the water instead of swimming like badasses. Then they get back to shore and climb a tower of people for some reason. It's so good.
And like not an ounce of, you know, irony
no
to it. Like it does it because they're like, this is gonna be fucking cool and we want to make it look as fucking cool as we can. And that's what they do.
They do.
It's not winking at the audience. It's not saying, you know, this is silly, right? Like, we're being silly so you can feel good about it being silly. No, it's just like, here's this big, extravagant bonanza of a movie, and we want you to enjoy every minute of it. After they meet up, the next, like, 45 minutes is like...
It's montage.
Kind of... It's just kind of like a really fun buddy musical comedy.
Yeah. They kind of forget their individual missions of like, hey, I'm trying to catch the shepherd of these people, and Beam's like, hey, I'm trying to find the girl that I'm after. Like, I don't think they forget, but the movie kind of forgets for a minute that they have their own missions, and it's just focused on like their brotherhood. Because Beam ends up crushing on this girl, Jenny Buxton, who is like the niece of the Buxtons, and that's a whole thing.
It's just like he's crushing on the girl and she likes him. We don't know if she likes him romantically or not, but
yeah. They end up going to here's another great scene. They end up going to a big party that they're hosting, and a bunch of snobby white dudes are like, who let these, Indians in here to... And then they start trying to show them up by doing a bunch of, like, classical European dance, like tango and foxtrot and all that bullshit.
Stiff white boy music. Yes. White boy dancing, basically.
Yeah. And then fucking Beam and Raju just go to town on these white boys with their badass dance. Oh, God. I don't remember what kind it's called. God, I really should have looked this up before. They just start dancing with this high energy, fast pace, over the top, amazing choreography, and they just kick ass. It's so good.
Yeah, it's not.
I wasn't expecting a dance number in the middle of this movie that started with a child getting abducted.
I hope I don't make it sound as dumb as it's going to sound coming out of my mouth. Nacho.
Yes.
It's the nacho scene. And not only do they like whip these snotty racist British boys in the dancing, like they get the entire palace on their side, and they spontaneously break into song. And like it's not just like good dancing, it's like powerful earth-shaking dancing. Like, yeah. It doesn't seem that their legs should be moving as fast and as powerfully as they are. It's absolutely nuts.
Everything about this movie feels superhuman. Like it's shot and choreographed in a way where every action that these two badasses do feels like the action of a demigod.
And like that's really them dancing. Like they know how to dance, they know how to perform like that, and they're doing that like in camera, and it's nuts.
So good.
And at the end of the scene, Beam is like, man, my legs are on fire. Like,
Raju's carrying him down the street.
And their friendship is so wholesome. Yeah. It's like they just love each other so much, and you're like, oh, when's the hammer gonna fall? And like,
so here's the thing. They don't know each other's secrets. Raju hasn't told Beam that he works for the government and is trying to find the shepherd. Beam hasn't told Raju that he's looking for this girl and that he's trying to get her back to her home. So the whole like first hour and a half of the film, like these two are on opposite ends of each other, but they don't know that. They don't know that they're enemies.
What I really love about how it's written is that for the first half of the movie, even though like you like that they're friends, and you like that Rama is so like in boy love with Beam, but like you still don't know what his story is.
Oh my God. Not knowing anything about this historical figure, I was blown away when they revealed his backstory.
It does this great balancing act of like, well, like I like him because he likes Beam, but he's still a fucking bastard.
Yeah,
like,
he's a race traitor, fascist bastard.
And they tease it out, and like we finally get like his backstory in this big long flashback. He was part of this village, and his father was training a resistance force with wooden guns because, fucking imperialism. There's this shootout, and like his father dies, and like he tells him, I need you to get a weapon in everybody's hands. And then like that's the light bulb moment. It's like, he's playing the long game. That's what he's doing. It's subterfuge.
Raju is getting into the good graces of the British Empire so that he can get access to weapons and start a revolution. And it is so...
I literally got chills. Like, I was like, oh.
It is so great. Not just because of Raju, but because of how it reflects off of Beam. Their stories are perfect counterparts to each other. Beam is not really focused on starting a revolution. He is focused on saving one life. He has
small scale and personal.
On the small scale, I want to save one life of this one girl from my village. It's personal for him. With Raju, it is this. It's personal, but it's like this big scale revolution. He has to do terrible shit. Sacrifice his soul in order to get what he wants, which is to finally see his people freed from the British Empire. And it plays off of each other so well. Like, they both learn and grow from each other. They both realize that, like, we have to do both. We have to think small and large scale, and they're such perfect counterparts for each other.
The big action scene where they're opposing forces, Beam in full-on fucking badass warrior mode's like, all right, we're gonna infiltrate this fucking palace and save this girl.
Oh my god, it's such a good scene. I thought it was the finale. I thought we were done there. I was like, what?
Nope, you still got half a movie to go,
There's
buddy.
Still half a movie after this?
He busts in, and there's carriages and trucks and stuff. And he has a whole fucking zoo in these vehicles.
He's captured leopards and tigers and deer and wolves.
Oh
and
my.
Kinds of shit. Just every creature of the jungle he unleashes in the middle of this castle to just tear apart the British Guard. Oh, so good.
He doesn't use the weapons of the imperialists. He doesn't use the technology of the imperialists. He uses nature. Where he comes from it's like a microcosm. Like that palace is like the British Empire.
Yeah.
And he is, the land that is being soiled and destroyed by these people. And he brings it to them, and it's so like...
It's so good. There's a part earlier where Beam actually did get into the palace. Jenny let him in for a little while. We see this real asshole guard who's just being a total racist dick to Beam for even though Jenny's the one who brought him there, he's just like being a total dick to Beam. And then later they set it up in that fight scene as if like, oh man, these two are gonna have a big showdown. Get him, Beam. And Beam just curb stomps this motherfucker.
Yep.
Like, it's not even a fight. He just kicks the shit out of the guard, takes the key, and starts going on.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah, it's a good subversion. You think like, oh, here's the badass henchman.
Here's the mini boss.
Badass. He's just an asshole who's jumped up on his own power.
He's just a chubby guard who thinks he's a badass. Like every fucking fascist.
So we got tigers and fucking all kinds of animals destroying people, which is awesome. And
this movie's brutal.
Like, I feel like Nick Frost's character in Hot Fuzz when he's talking about Point Break. Like he's like, because that's another like buddy action movie.
Yeah,
where like undercover and like, oh, and then he loves him so much and he can't do it.
Oh, we're just gonna gush about this movie. I think it's so good.
Gushing's fun.
It is fun
gushing.
I know. I love it. It's such a good film. I don't even really have any criticism of it, to be honest.
I mean, there's nothing. I mean, if you want to, you can say maybe it's a little too long, but like,
honestly,
I don't feel the length because it's so well told.
I'm on record for being a complainer about a long film. I did not feel the length of this movie at all. Even though I thought, oh man, we're at the finale at this point, it wasn't because of like, oh man, I'm tired of this movie. It was because it was like, god damn, we've built up to this huge moment and there's more?
So much more.
Like, it's so good.
The second half is the darker half because, Rama, like, even though he's one of the good guys, he's still kind of thematically got to pay. And so, he gets found out and captured and tortured, and he's got to, kind of find himself again.
Yeah, Rama, during that big fight, he can't blow his cover. He has to get those weapons, so he and Beam duke it out. And it's just brutal.
And I don't want them to fight, even though they're both awesome, and it's fun watching them fight.
It's so good. They just kick the shit out of each other. Beam they're both freakishly strong and fast, but like Beam seems to be like the stronger of the two, while Raju seems to be the more like agile, and like it's just so awesome seeing these two just kick the shit out of each other, even though you're like, no, be friends.
Oh man, God, I gotta watch this movie again.
I know, I want to just put it on right now. Beam loses. He doesn't manage to save the girl. Raju captures him, and we get God damn, this scene. The fucking flogging scene.
Oh my God.
It's insane how they...
I cried. I was crying.
It's so powerful in so many ways. It's sad. It's, like, infuriating. It's, like, hopeful and inspiring. It hits on so much shit. Beam is brought out for a public flogging, and of course the fucking British bastard Buxtons are like, oh, your whip that you're using isn't good enough, use this one that we've put shards of glass and nails in, and like they hand it out, and Raju's the one having to do the flogging, so he's beating Beam across his back, and just like the whip, every time it hits him, tears pieces of his flesh out, and the whole time Beam is singing like this traditional song of his people that's basically telling him, he's basically giving himself the courage not to bend and break. He's just singing like, you are the land, you are the rivers, you are the forest, you will not bow. And it's so fucking powerful to see him getting he's getting torn to pieces, and he just won't bend his will.
And he manages to like inspire upheaval and a riot just through the power of his words, and not bending to the torture.
When he finally passes out, the crowd around them, all these Indian people that were forced to gather and watch, riot, and it is so inspiring. God damn, this is a good movie.
It's so goddamn good. And then...
Fuck the British Empire.
Fuck the British Empire.
I'm so glad that we as Americans don't have a complicated history with imperialism, racism, genocide.
Oh, no, we're good. We're good.
Fuck yeah, land of the free.
I will say, though, it's really nice to lose yourself in a movie like this that's, that tells you that, hey, maybe, we can rise, and challenge power. Maybe, possibly. But I'm not going to get bummed out because this is not that kind of movie.
Okay, and Doomer.
So I won't allow it. Probably maybe my favorite fight in the movie after a while happens, where Beam, after Arma has been found out to be a traitor, he's in prison, he's stuck in the hole, Beam comes to rescue him, and because he's been stuck in the hole, his legs aren't working that well.
Yeah.
So they literally become human Legos.
Oh my god.
And Rama just gets on Beam's shoulders, and they're acting as one giant fighting guy.
Oh my god.
They don't disconnect the entire escape. They're just like, they're running around, kicking, punching, shooting guns.
Which is also like, it also works because it's like, I think that's a reference to Vishnu, because isn't Vishnu like the four-armed Hindi god?
Like, yeah, I want to stay away from like the cultural thing because we're so inadequate about it, so I don't want to say something that makes it sound stupid.
There's clearly elements of it in there. There's clearly elements of Indian culture and like mythology in here, because like there's a whole point where they're at
tons of it. I just don't know what it means.
They're at a shrine at one point, and it's like one of the gods that has like a bow and arrow. It's like a warrior god or a hunter god, and like Raju takes like the bow and arrow from it and basically embodies that god for a while.
Oh, man. And so there's that crazy, we're on each other's shoulders fighting like Goro from Mortal Kombat.
Just throwing guys around and beating the shit out of them, and they have a gun, and then they start shooting from on top of each other's shoulders. I could just gush about the action in this movie all night without doing any criticism. There's nothing to criticize. This is a perfect film.
I mean, and we're not really being hyperbolic because a lot of people have this as like a top movie of 2022 so far.
Absolutely, absolutely one of the best.
I mean, I guess we could just jump straight to the finale, you know?
Yeah.
Just because.
So he gets Raju out of prison. Raju was in prison because he helped Beam. He, realized he had to help Beam save this girl or he wouldn't be able to live with himself. So he, finally managed to, he got Beam out of there. Big finale. They're in the jungle. They're getting hunted down by the government. They just tear through these guys that get sent after them. Raju, like I said, he takes that bow and arrow. He starts using it. Beam just is beating the shit out of people. He ends up getting a motorcycle from somebody after he kicks the guy off of it and flips it,
catches it with his bare hands.
It's so good. Oh, and it all culminates with them basically throwing that motorcycle charged with explosives into the British palace, which explodes because they throw it into the armory. They
literally throwing it at the British palace.
They blow up the whole goddamn palace, kill the Buxtons, and start a revolution. And fuck me, it's such a good movie.
That whole fight in the forest, it's like a Rambo movie on steroids.
Yes.
Because they're using the environment and the fucking British assholes are so out of their depth and they're getting taken out one by one. And then fucking Rama's just this beautiful, glowing,
he's a god. He's
half naked god man.
The British in this movie are perfectly incompetent. They're cannon fodder for these two amazing, powerful men just tearing through them.
Yeah, and we said it before, it's historical fan fiction, and the only criticism I've seen is, and it's been faint criticism, is that some people are oh, it's kind of propaganda. And it's so?
Okay, here's the propaganda message. Fascism, bad. Fascism, imperialism, racism, bad. If you have a problem with that, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, how can you really have a problem, even though it's very incredibly loosely based on historical figures? How could you have a problem with a movie that is so vehemently anti-fascist that you care that it's propaganda? I don't care what culture it comes from.
If anything, I would
it's telling a very blatant, obvious story that people need to hear.
If anything, I would yes, absolutely. And also, it's so refreshing to have a movie with uncomplicated villains. Just a complex villain is great. I love to have a complex villain with, complex motives and everything. But sometimes you just need a right bastard to hate. And this movie gives us those.
Do we really need, backstory and humanity for some,
for fascists!
British,
for fascist imperialist
some fascists? Yeah, I mean, come on.
They're terrible people, and in the real world, they did terrible things. There's no point in humanizing them.
Yeah, the bit I do know of how terrible the British imperialism was of India, it was fucking barbaric, horrific shit. And you don't hear about it in the history classes, of course. If you watch a movie like this and you want to learn the history, it's really sobering. Just how much of this has happened throughout history. And if a country wants to be hey, you know what? We're going to make a historical superhero fan fiction where we stick it to our historical oppressors. Why not, let them?
I mean, my God, the 4th of July in America is just people celebrating the time we said fuck the British over and over. That's all that fucking holiday is. It's a fuck the British day.
Yep. Yeah, fuck the British. Maybe not the British now, the average British person. You're cool. You're cool.
We have one fan in the UK, I think, so maybe they're Irish. They're probably Irish.
Blimey, these bastards. The right pricks they are. Chip, chip, cheerio.
Okay, now you've lost them. Unless, again, they're Irish or Scottish, in which case they're probably laughing with us.
I feel okay making stereotypical jokes about other white people, so it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Oh, boy, god damn. I don't even know what else to say about this movie.
Yeah,
it's so
a 3-hour movie,
good.
But what else can you say besides, it's awesome. It's fun. It has amazing, beautiful action. It's filmed beautifully. You love the characters. There's only so much you can talk about a movie that's so complete in its goodness before, you just kind of start sounding redundant, if you've heard about this movie, if you've heard rumblings, on social media about it, dude, load up Netflix and you sit down for 3 hours and just have a blast.
Yeah.
Because that's what this movie is.
It's so fun. It gets you definitely in the mood of like, man, I just want to go kick some fascist in the teeth, which is a mood that we could probably use right now in the United States.
It's a hell of a mood. It's a hell of a mood.
Anyway.
And I do want to say that social media is in love with the movie, as they should be, but a lot of it's like, oh, it's just this crazy batshit, like, oh my god, it's the craziest thing ever, and it's like, yeah, it is a very over the top movie, but it doesn't get lost in the actual emotional sincerity, and the actual depth of the characters, because the meat is there. It's not just spectacle.
No, absolutely not. Everything is tied to these two characters' journeys of wanting to save their people, whether that's saving a single life or the lives of a country. It's all tied into their arcs. It's not style over substance. It's style in substance.
Which is my favorite.
Very good. It's very good shit. Fuck, shit, we've kind of blown through this review. It's going to be a short one, I think.
I've noticed that, like, when we both really love a thing, most of the time, like, we actually kind of get through it quickly.
Just because we want to gush.
Because we just want to gush.
Yeah. Love the hell out of this movie. Do have a question, though, and this is more of a general, broader question. This is historical fan fiction. With that, what's really, like, on the table when we talk about, like, fictionalizing the lives of real people for entertainment purposes? And I mean, specifically in this context, it's like people of great cultural significance, because these were, like, revolutionary figures in leading the resistance against the British Empire in India. So, what's on the table? What's off the table? I guess it's sort of a nerd ethics.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess this is nerd ethics.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Speaking to this movie and these people, I have no idea what the relationship the people of India have with their historical figures. I don't know if they're more educated on their historical figures than the average American. I don't know if, because there's so many people in India, it's roughly the same amount across the population as America with their historical figures. So, I mean, as far as this movie, these characters, these historical figures, I don't know. But in general, haven't we always fictionalized historical figures?
That's a great fucking point, Tyler. How much of history is even real is a great fucking point.
I mean, it seems like the obvious point to me. I mean, there's that, that famous quote, history's written by the victors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an excellent point. So if we're talking about historical fiction, at least historical fiction acknowledges it's fiction.
Yeah, and like, if anything, if somebody watches a movie like RRR and they like it, that's just going to prompt the curious mind to be like, I'm going to look up these guys for real. Because unless you're really fucking stupid, you're not going to watch this movie and be like, oh, that all happened.
Oh my god!
Wow, I can't believe I did the things with the tigers and he caught a motorcycle. So, I mean, maybe it's like the Hamilton effect. Like, of course, Hamilton is far more realistically, historically accurate, quote unquote, than this movie is. But Hamilton, as much as I don't like Hamilton, hot take, that like spawned a whole wave of people who got into American history and became history nerds. And that's fucking cool because they saw the show and it moved them to the point where they're like, I want to learn more. I want to know about this history. That's what good art can do for people. When it moves them, is that they want to learn more about the actual real world that it's representing.
Hell yeah. I agree. And most importantly, this came from an Indian studio. This came from people inundated in the culture. It wasn't made by
Indian people who make films in India for Indian audiences.
Right. That's very important. I don't think this would have been nearly as impactful or as tasteful of a film if it had been done by an American studio.
Yeah, this isn't some, American filmmaker fucking British filmmaker, telling this story from their perspective. Mm-hmm. It's these people telling their story.
Right. Okay. I think they answered that one. That's the most controversy I've got. I think we're just sort of in agreement. This movie's too good to say anything bad about. Any other sections? Honestly, I didn't even review this one. I was just like, I don't need to know what the internet's saying about this. I fucking loved it.
I'm actually kind of curious. Sometimes I'm like dreading review. Sometimes I'm curious. This is one of those times where I'm actually like really curious.
All right, I'll just pull up Rotten Tomatoes. We'll just Rotten Tomatoes, RRR, and I'm just going to freestyle it through some of the ones I see here. Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 91% tomatometer. 94% audience score, so people fucking loved it. It's well beloved across the internet. Let's see. Any of these interesting? It's people just gushing like we are. Yeah.
You probably might find more negativity or mixed reactions on Letterboxd or something like that.
Well, I don't want to go there. So, I think we're good. If people fucking love it, they should. It's very, very, very good movie. I don't need to see any stupid alt-right messages being like, they betrayed this inaccurately, or they made these people seem more heroic than they actually were. And it's like, I don't fucking care. I don't care. It's a good movie.
Shut up.
It's a good movie with a good message. Fuck fascists. Fuck fascists, fuck imperialists, fuck racists, fuck them. All the bad ists. We don't like them. You shouldn't tolerate them.
Oh, another thing. When the movie proper is over, there's also like a 10-minute musical number that announces the credits.
Yes! It's so good.
It's just the stars. It's just the stars on a beautiful, elaborate set, dancing and singing to music.
And then, like, historical figures just showing up behind them. I didn't even know who those people were, and I was so hyped for it. I'm like, fuck yeah, it's that guy!
I watched a video essay on YouTube who just basically gushing about the movie like we are.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the end credit scene. He's like, then some guy shows up. Like, I don't remember seeing him in the movie. And then I looked it up and it's like, oh, that's the director. The director gave himself a cameo in the end credits musical number. So, I mean, hey, he deserves it.
Rise.
And he has other movies on Netflix, which I have yet to watch. But they're definitely on the docket.
Yeah, hell yeah. Anything that comes close to this film's glory. I need to watch a lot more Indian films in general. If this is the general vibe they're putting out, fuck yeah, I'm down.
There are two that are on Netflix. It's a two-parter. I'm probably going to butcher the name. I think they're pronounced Bahubali or Bahubali, part 1 and 2. And they're fantasy epics. I don't know if fantasy is the right term because there's not like, magic and elves and shit, but it's like a basic, I guess a grounded fantasy epic, and like they're also supposed to be fucking awesome, and they're both over 2.5 hours. So
big long movies.
They go big in Indian cinema.
That's awesome.
And he has one that I really want to see. That's not on Netflix, unfortunately. I think it's pronounced Eega, Eega, and it's about a guy who dies or is murdered. I can't remember which, and he comes back as a fly. Because the word Eega or Aiga is fly, I think.
Okay.
In the native tongue, in the native language. And it looks absolutely ridiculous. And guess what? It's also over 2 hours. So I'm like, how can you make a movie about a guy who comes back to life as a fly?
Oh,
and
boy.
It's like the length of a Hollywood epic. I don't get it. But I'm here for it.
I can't be any worse than the last fly human hybrid movie that I ever watched.
Yeah, I don't think it'll go into the body horror. So, but we could be wrong. We could be wrong.
I don't know what to expect, but if anything comes close to matching RRR's excellent, I will be happy. I'm definitely going to dig more into Indian cinema now, having seen that.
I mean, there's a whole
world,
whole dearth of Indian cinema to dive into. Mm-hmm. And it's me, the movie guy. It's one of the areas where I'm woefully undereducated on. So, I mean, hey, this is a heck of a primer. That's for sure.
Yeah, it sure is. It sets a high bar. I guess that's our recommendation section knocked out.
Yeah, just look for Rajamouli's. Just look for more of his movies.
Any
or the stars, more of their movies, because those two guys, they are superstars.
Yeah, I recognized Beam. Seeing him in some other stuff, or at least seeing him in like images for other things. I don't know if I actually remember him from any movies themselves, but like I knew the actor's face. And
good lord, I'm not gonna lie, Rama is a handsome devil.
Oh yeah.
Which brings me to. Is it horny?
Oh my god, I forgot about it. Is it horny? I don't know enough about Indian culture in general to yeah, but through your here's what I'm gonna say.
Westernized.
Let me throw this out here. I don't know how big homophobia is in India. I kind of want to say it's very strong because it tends to be very strong in Eastern Asian countries for some reason, like in China. I know they're really homophobic for some reason, but oh my god, Beam and Raju were so fucking gay for each other. Like, I don't know if they intended for it to come out that way, but it comes off as these two are deeply in love. There's a point where Beam is saving Raju's life by giving him the antidote to snake venom, and he literally tells him, I value your friendship more than my own life. And I'm just like, these two love each other.
Well, it's curious because that brings up the conversation we had previously in a previous episode of, does same-sex platonic love, does it tends to be interpreted or, you know, projected to be from the audience's perspective homosexual.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a problem?
Yeah, we talked about that before, and I still have mixed feelings on this because I don't want to fetishize homosexual men, because that tends to happen especially in internet spaces, especially amongst white women, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
I know a couple people.
I know. I'm friends with some. It's problematic at times, but there's a thin, or maybe not a thin line, but there is a line between fetishizing homosexuality and ignoring homosexual like themes and messages going on, because stuff has been queer coded for so long. There's that whole running gag of like, oh, they were roommates, that like historians will be like, these two people were buried together and spent their entire lives together and were together all the time. They must have been great pals, and they'll just ignore the obvious homosexual connotations. You have to focus on, I think, the actual ways in which these people interact with each other to see if it's, oh, we're fetishizing these two people being together versus, oh, we're actually acknowledging the obvious, like, queer-coded romance occurring between these characters. And even though I don't know what the creators intended, I think with Beam and Raju, it is pretty obvious that they meant or that these characters have some queer coding in them that's beyond just a platonic bromance and full romance. Because like I said, that scene, like, he talks about how he values the friendship more than his life. It's during a scene where he's also being very physically touchy with Raju. Like, he is helping him, healing him from like a snake bite, but he's basically nursing him back to health. He's like, Raju is like half naked while like Beam has his hands on him and he's telling him this. There's a lot of queer coding in it.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see people seeing that, but because this is a film made from a cultural perspective that we know nothing about, we don't know the little nuances and social cues and like how they tell their stories and interpret their stories. I think it's kind of irresponsible to be like, oh, well, they're queer coded, obviously. Or maybe it's just my dumb straight boy brain, but I took it as just them telling her really, really, really sincere platonic best friends narrative, like, because they're both honorable men and they're both good-hearted and they're both on a mission. We talked about this. Go ahead.
We talked about this in the Harley Quinn review, and I think it's similar here. The whole like thing there that we were talking about was how sometimes will have people who like, why do people force female characters to be in a relationship and everything? And we talked about how there are counter narratives that develop, against a problematic cultural narrative that's ongoing. So I think that's kind of where this fetishization of homosexuality started. It was people really wanting to read into the queer coding. It came from a good place, intentional place of like people being like, let's stop pretending that everything's straight. There's so many clearly coded queer relationships happening. And I think it's gone too far in certain spaces where people make everything gay, and not just that's not the problem. It's the fact that it becomes if it's gay, it's automatically like the gayest. Like we want to see everything be super raunchy. These two butt fuck each other all the time. It's like, what the hell? Like, why are you fetishizing these two? Like, they're human beings. If you did this with a woman, like a straight woman, a straight man, it would be so weird. Why are we okay with doing it with gay people? Like,
I see that a lot, mostly in the shipper community.
Yeah,
because oh god, I've gone on a couple of, because I know what shipping is, and like I ship in a very surface level way, but like I've gone down some shipping rabbit holes just because I'm curious. Like, it is a deep like, community. Like, shipping is insane.
It's its own cultural phenomenon within fandom. Yes.
And when shippers in a fandom get it in their head that like this character and this character, they could be same sex, they could be two straight people, it doesn't matter, but like this character and this character, like I'm shipping them, and that's my headcanon. And if somebody, if you don't like it, fuck you, you're wrong. And if like the creators themselves don't canonize it and legitimize my headcanon, fuck them.
Yeah.
That's happened in like prominent fandoms, of, like prominent shows.
And we've talked about
the Voltron show on Netflix had that problem. Mm-hmm. Huge shipper problem. I know what happened with Steven Universe.
Yeah. I talked about that in My Hero Academia, I think, back in our Toxic Fandom episode. That there's a lot of problems with that too. A lot of it in the anime community. But yeah, I think most people, when they're reading these messages of, looking at two male characters or two female characters or whatever, saying, oh, they're gay for each other, I think it's usually from a place of good intention, being like, these two people have a very clear, strong connection to one another that would be obvious in a romantic relationship. Why are we trying to deny that it's a romantic relationship? There's clearly an extreme where we stop looking at these characters as people and start looking at them as exclusively something to fetishize. I don't want to make this a kink shame thing though. There are places for stories where we can get into the very explicit sexual nature of relationship. There's space for those stories. Those stories are valuable and important. And I don't want to make it sound like I don't want those kind of stories, especially in queer spaces. We need to normalize having more, openly sexual narratives. Queer culture has been pushing for that forever. But there's definitely a point where it stops being about the characters and the actual relationship that we see, and it's just become, we want them to be gay because we like the gay.
Yeah, and maybe it also comes from that person who ships it so hard, their sexual attraction to one of or both of the characters, mm-hmm. and they want to vicariously kind of They want to see these characters in sexual situations in a sexual relationship because they're attracted to those characters and mm-hmm. turns them on. And I know it might sound like I'm just kind of pulling this out of my butt, but this is behavior and stuff that I've seen and from people in real life and on the internet.
I think it would be a lot less problematic if there wasn't also elements, like I mentioned earlier, sort of elements of race at play here, race and gender. Because it does seem to be predominantly white, some often straight white women shipping two male characters together, and it's sort of it's objectifying in a way that is uncomfortable, that I don't want to talk about, because we've been objectifying women for way too long. Like, should we really get upset with them objectifying men? Like,
I mean,
it's a complicated issue. I don't want to make it sound like it's like cut and dry. There's definitely some nuance here.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, shitty behavior is shitty behavior, you know?
Yeah, but there's a sliding scale.
I've seen, like, it's an open thing, you know, the open thing of, you know, women, particularly white women, who, like, the gay best friend thing, where like they want the gay best friend because like they fetishize that relationship,
reducing
and like
people.
Use it like they're pet gay, you know?
That's like
that's like an open thing that's been known and been criticized for years and years and years now. So like there's definitely
that's a good point, and I think that's
truth to it.
That's what I think I've really been trying to wrap my head around, is the problematic element of this is that it sort of just reduces people to a single character trait and stereotypes them.
Man, we always just get on the shit.
We've spent more time talking about this than I think we did an actual movie. This isn't even like really like the movie itself's great. This is just like the bullshit around it that honestly I hadn't even seen.
Yeah, I mean, because like I knew when I watched this, and I knew when I told you to watch
this section is it horny. How did we get here? This is a nerd ethics. How did we get to nerd ethics from Is It Horny?
I'm just saying, but like I knew, I'm like, if Isaac watches this and we do a nerd ethics or an Is It Horny about it, it's the possible homosexual /overtones of the relationship is going to be a point of conversation.
My opinion overall is that usually when we have movies that have bromances, typically, it can also be female-female, but it tends to be bromances, and we see a lot of people saying like, oh, they're gay. I don't usually have a problem with it because, like I said, I think a lot of it is people wanting to read that queer coding and, you know, see more actual positive representation of homosexual relationships. But I can see the problem of it becoming too much and reductive to the actual characters themselves. I understand that that's a problem. I think the bigger problem at this point in time is the opposite end, though, where we won't show, you know, homosexual relation, where we're still hesitant to show homosexual relationships.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that.
It's like it's the lesser of two evils. Like, fetishization of homosexuality is not good, but it's better than straight up, we will not show homosexuals.
And the problem is, one of the problems is that in recent years there has been an influx in queer storytelling in the mainstream.
Yeah.
In television and film, but not the real mainstream. You know, like not the biggest of the big. You know, not your Marvels, not your Star Warses, not your DC, not your big franchise.
They pepper in just enough of it for them to edit it out for China.
Yep, that's pretty much it. They throw a little spice in there, a blink and you'll miss it moment just to say they did, just to say they tried, and that's that. Because that in and of itself, because an IP like Star Wars or Marvel is so big, that in and of itself is going to cause the headlines and the discourse.
You can say Disney. You can just say Disney does it.
Yeah, Disney. Like, just like look at the Lightyear fucking thing. Like, another blink and you'll miss it. Same-sex kiss. Like, literally, like blink. If you like bend down to like look into your popcorn, like you miss it.
And then when they have the guts,
of course, it caused this huge blow up.
Yeah. And when you actually they do have the guts to actually go all the way out and have like a main character be in a homosexual relationship, they'll cancel a series for having that, like they are doing with the Owl House. Although I guess technically it's not really canceled, they just reduced it by a season, but I guess that's technically I don't know how the fuck the terminology works, but ugh.
So I'm waiting for when these big production companies have the balls or whatever genitalia to be like, we're going to make this big popular IP thing and it's going to have a queer romance in it that's going to be up front and center, not like in the background, blurred out. We can't tell what's really going on.
Yeah. Anyway,
anywho.
Should we rate the damn thing and be done with it? Any final thoughts on RRR? We kind of got way off track of RRR there at the end.
It's just, it's so good.
It's so good.
RRR reminds me why I really love movies.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to say about it.
It's powerful. You feel it. It's a movie of feeling. As silly and absurd as it can be at times, it never stops making you feel.
Yeah. Good, eloquent way to put it.
I'm going to give RRR 15 out of 15 jungle creatures caged up and released as a diversion for a rescue mission. Perfect film.
I can't think of anything clever to arbitrarily rate it, so I'm just good movie. Go watch.
Good movie, go watch it. A great 3 hours. I think that's going to do it for us. If you enjoyed this episode, drop a like or a comment and share it with your friends. You can follow us at Tongue and Geek on Instagram and Twitter. That's at Tongue and Geek, all one word. Thanks for listening to Tongue and Geek, and remember, don't throw your baby in the trash.